.com, Dr. Patrick Byrne.
Good afternoon. I spoke here 2 years ago, and it would have fit in a shoebox. I'm so happy to see this conference expand like it has. What an honor to speak to the North American Bitcoin Conference again. I warn you, I mean, by the way, in case you can't read the hat, it's not the, it's make Bitcoin great again. Don't want to. And in case you can't read the shirt, it's dirty hippie. I warn you, I used to teach philosophy, and I'm reminded of this story about a guy who's flying to Miami on a plane, sees this woman next to him, can't help but notice she's got this enormous diamond ring on her finger. Just that, he said, my gosh, madam, that is the largest diamond I've ever seen, the most beautiful diamond I've ever seen. She says, oh, this is the famous Clopfield diamond, the world famous Clopfield diamond. And he says, the Clopfield diamond, never heard of it, but it's something. She says, oh, yes, but it comes with the Clopfield curse. And he says, the Clopfield curse, what's that? She says, Mr. Clopfield. Well, when you invite a philosopher to come talk to you, I warn you, you may get some philosophy along the way. But who am I? If you know me, I'm what Wired magazine called several years ago the Messiah, well, the scourge of Wall Street and the Messiah of Bitcoin. I'm not sure about the Messiah of Bitcoin, scourge of Wall Street, the shoe fence. When I was here 2 years ago, I walked through a number of issues with Wall Street that I thought blockchain could fix, and I pointed out to the crowd then that the simplest solution, the simplest way to fix Wall Street, sometimes there are problems that are of such a sort, the simplest way to fix them is to drag Wall Street behind the barn and kill it with an axe, and recreate it on blockchain in a way where the various grifts were not available. I'm going to walk you through one of those, and I direct you, incidentally, I'll warn you, I'm under all kinds of legal constraints today, and all the reasons aren't going to be obvious, but there's lawyers pulling me in 6 different directions about what I can and can't say, so I'm going to, if there's any questions about anything I say, look to the Q3 earnings call transcript. I've been directed to direct. Okay, let me show you what I mean. In August of this year, 6 pension funds filed what I think may be the first $1 trillion lawsuit in America. It followed against the 6 major prime brokers on Wall Street, realizing that they've been ripped off for a couple decades. And as a result of this, pension funds in America are cracking. There's New York Teamsters pension becomes first to run out of money. Experts warn of pension tsunami. If you don't know it, firemen funds, firemen, teachers, cops, all these government pension funds are cracking around the country. I'm going to tell you why, and it's connected to this fact. This was on October 23rd of 2008, when Alan Greenspan, when the world was melting down, Alan Greenspan was called out of retirement by Congress to come and explain what the heck is going on. And he said this sentence that's been misunderstood, or aspects have been overlooked. No sound. Well, there are additional regulatory changes that this breakdown of the central pillar of competitive markets.
Stability, particularly in the areas of fraud, settlement, and securitization.
Well, the left jumped on this and said, you see, Alan Greenspan says markets even Greenspan says markets need government in order to work. And of course, fraud was things like Bernie Madoff, securitization, mortgage-backed securities. This settlement thing has been whitewashed out of history. What happened September 15, 2008 was a settlement crisis. The major banks didn't know who they could accept as counterparty. Why that happened is connected to this fact. Now I'm about to draw all these facts together, but just stick with me for one more data point. I got in a very famous fight with Wall Street 10 years ago, and in the course of that fight, I spent $20 or $30 million in discovery. And we got a document. This document cost me $30 million to get, what I'm about to show you. It's from Goldman Sachs, my old friends. Goldman and I have a long history. And the secret is, this is the big secret of Goldman Sachs. 75% of America's prime brokerage revenue and 51% of global revenue comes from an activity that almost no one knows anything about. It's called securities lending. 75% of the revenue, I think it's over 100% of their profit, of Goldman Sachs, prime brokerage. And by the way, I think this is true for all the 6 big primes. This is what securities lending is. You've probably heard of short selling. You get told that short selling is where a short seller borrows stock and sells it. It's not actually true. What happens is a pension fund, let's say they custody with a prime broker, and the prime broker, let's say Lumber Liquidators was a big short sell in recent years. Lumber Liquidators wants to, a short seller wants to short sell. They find out the prime broker that it is available to short sell. They locate it. They don't actually borrow it. They locate it, which I represent as a little bullseye. And let's say they pay $20 for that privilege. That's how it's supposed to work. How it really turned out to be working a decade ago was there was very little to keep that prime broker once he realized he could get $20 from one short seller to keep them from telling other short sellers, hey, you're good for locates too, you're good for this, you can go ahead and short sell, and charging each of them $20. Believe it or not, the bookkeeping back at the prime brokers is non-existent. There's a recording exists of an SEC official scolding in a sort of private forum, private-ish forum, some senior officials of 2 of the big primes saying, hey, come on, wait, and this was in front of a small audience of Wall Street insiders, saying, come on, work with us. We do these audits on your locate trails, and you're supposed to be recording whose stock you're locating. Your guys are writing Mickey Mouse or 3 dots or something. There's no record keeping at all. So there's really very little to keep them from over-locating. And there's other different kinds of meshagas, other different kinds of games that goes on. Somewhere around a decade ago, the pension funds got smart and started saying, well, if you're going to make $20 loaning my stock out, give me 30%. Give me 6 of it. So there have been various court cases that show what the prime brokers do is you find an intermediate prime broker that you loan the stock to, instead charging, say, $2 comes back, you give 30% of $2 up, so the pension fund only sees 60 cents instead of $6, and then the locate goes on to another guy who pays the 20, and then there's this game played in the overnight repo market where the winnings get split up. So they cheat the pension funds once again. That is why, it is because of this kind of meshagas, this craziness creates more stock in the system than has actually ever been issued. It's because of that on 2008, October 23rd, Alan Greenspan is explaining to Congress this is a settlement crisis. There was trillions more stock in the system than anyone could account for, and the system froze. It was a settlement crisis. It's also, here's a way to fix it. tZero has built so one of our blockchain subsidiaries, we have Overstock built a subsidiary called Medici to invest in blockchain 4 years ago. And one of our 11 investments is tZero. And tZero, among its many products that it is bringing to market, it has brought in the last couple months this to market, it's a software that replaces that role of the prime broker. And this software gets licensed to a broker-dealer who takes custody, auctions off these locates. What you're doing is you're collapsing, let's say the market collapses to 10, because now it's not opaque. Of that 10, 8 goes back to the pension fund, $2 gets for our trouble. That Wall Street exists on keeping markets opaque. Anytime something goes from over the counter, and over the counter means, hey, it's a hedge fund calling up 3 different primes saying, what rate will you give me to borrow Lumber Liquidators today? And instead goes to exchange traded, a nice auction, about 80% of the margin collapses on Wall Street. So what we think this is going to do is going to make happy the short sellers who get the locates, honest locates, for $10 instead of 20. It's going to make the pension funds really happy. I think it's a way we can break the pension fund crisis. In fact, there was an analysis that the pension funds are going broke because they've been assuming a 7% actuarial assumption, and the truth should have been a 4. Well, that missing 3% is about the revenue that comes out of this game and gets turned into 75% of the revenue of Goldman Sachs. If what we can do is get the pension funds to adopt this technology, which I think shouldn't be too hard to sell, what it effectively does is replumbs that pipe. So instead of being 75% of their revenue, it goes back to the pension funds, where it's about a missing 2.5% to 3%. It could solve the pension fund crisis. Of course, we make it so everybody's happy. Almost everybody's happy. But these things are all connected. The pension fund crisis, this lawsuit, the cause is all related to this sort of grift that's in the system that gets turned into 75% of the revenue of Goldman Sachs prime brokerage. That's why the pension funds are suing, and that's why they're breaking, because they've been losing 2.5% to 3% per year to this game without knowing it. Now let me talk to you about a different application of blockchain that's really important. Oh, by the way, because of all kinds of things tZero's in the middle of, I can't say more than that. And Overstock's in the middle of, I can't say more than that. But there's a lot of other products tZero is introducing that sort of connects the world of national market system, fixed compliance, the financial system as we know it, with the world of blockchain. And there's a lot of connections to be made there, and tZero, we 4 years ago sort of bought a node of Wall Street and started blockchainizing it 3 or 4 years ago for this reason, because we want to be, basically there's the conventional world, there's this new world of blockchain, the new universe of blockchain. We want to be the wormhole that connects those two universes. That's tZero. Now let me mention something I'm really excited about. I think that we have the solution to global poverty sitting in front of us. And I don't say that lightly. There's 7.5 billion people on Earth. 2.5 billion live in the world as we know it. 5 billion live in an unglobalized world. There's this famous Peruvian economist named Hernando de Soto. And de Soto figured out many years ago that his great contribution is, in fact, is that these 5 billion people, while they live outside the world of legal rights as we know it, they already have informal social compacts governing the way they live. Hernando, well, let me walk through what we're going to, this argument. These 5 billion people do own assets. And from cows in Tanzania, which are branded, every single one is branded, to Egypt, to the Peruvian forest, to Afghanistan. Believe it or not, there are informal contracts covering everything. I'll give you the quick, I'll skip the slides, I'll just give you the quick rundown on this. What Hernando de Soto did was, in the 1980s, there was a Maoist guerrilla movement called the Shining Path, Sendero Luminoso. And it was like Khmer Rouge. They butchered about 70,000 people. The US considered it the largest security risk in the Western Hemisphere. They had taken 60% of Peru. And this economist had this idea. And a good way to think of it is what happened in the United States in 1849, when we had the gold rush. We had, there were 850 mining camps around California. And every mining camp they'd come up with, even these miners, come up with a set of rules. If you want to stake a claim, you draw it on a map, make your mark, and you nail it on that tree. And we all agree that tree, in this little creek, that tree is going to be the keeper of the records. And then that evolves into some